We heard that statement to the media from Canada Post. You were among those who delivered this, by hand to the company yesterday morning. What has their response been to the union?
There has been no response, and I'd like to add in that the special mediators were in the room with us, and basically Canada Post said thank you, got up, and said that they'd ask questions if they needed to, and we've heard nothing since.
So there has been no communication between the two parties a day later?
No, we heard through the media, the same way they chastised us for earlier on the weekend for talking through the media.
Okay, let me put a couple of the things they did say to the media to you about what you put on the table to them. They essentially say that they are have already come forward with wage increases above their previous offers. They say 70% of current employees are at the maximum current salary range, making more than $30 an hour plus OT and cost of living allowance payments. They're willing to offer good pensions for retirement and maintain up to 7 weeks of vacation and 13 personal days. Is that not close to where you'd like it to be?
Well, it's funny that they bring up the 13 personal days. That has nothing to do with Canada Post. That has everything to do with the Canada Labour Code. In 2019 and 20, all federal workers, because of the pandemic, received those allotments. But the 7 weeks of vacation, in 1980, we took 0% for a raise to get that week of vacation, and the 6th week of vacation a year, 6 and 7 in 1980 and 81. So those are things that we bargained for and gave up money for in the past. And now they try to make it seem like we're these rich cousins that have something we're not deserving of.
I think, if I'm to guess, why they do is because on the face of it, and I totally take your point about how you got to this position, but many Canadians at home who have now endured this, the impact of this strike for a month will say, 7 weeks of vacation, 13 personal days, like who among us have anything like that? And that 70% of the employees are at that range. The company says they're willing to go beyond their initial offer of 11%. Like, I guess it would appear on the face of it pretty hard to understand why that negotiation is not happening.
The negotiation should happen. And instead of talking about things that are already in a collective agreement, Canada Post should be talking about the 25% increase in postage that they're going to implement on January the 13th without trying to give a good share of that to their employees. They're not going to make it 25% of our wages. They're going to make 25% of their revenue. So when revenue goes up, employees should be in line to get something, and it shouldn't just be all spent on trucks and buildings.
But isn't it kind of just spent on plugging the holes? With great respect, like they lost $750 million last year. Even if they're able to raise revenue through other means, don't they have to compensate for everything they've lost?
If they had raised the price, if it's $1 billion, if they had raised the price of every parcel that they delivered by $3, they would have covered those expenses. And they're the cheapest carrier in the country. And small businesses prove it. When they talk about us, they say they pay 3 times as much when they go to Purolator or one of the other competitors. And Canada Post also had a lucrative contract with Amazon and threw it away. They told them they couldn't deliver their parcels. And they say they've lost, Mr. Hamilton will say that they went from 60% of the parcel market to 29%. Well, what number was Amazon? Because they sent them away.
I guess what I do certainly understand what you're saying about how they got where they are. But can two things not be true? That can you push back on that while at the same time acknowledging that is where they are, right? And that is the financial situation. And we've talked about this before. But like, if you're a company losing $750 million in a year, how can you afford a 19% raise for your employees?
The question is how can management that brought the company into that, or that corporation into that position, are going to have an idea of how to fix it? If they had an idea how to fix it, they should have done it years ago, but they haven't. None of them have an idea that's going to help the post office.
I got to ask you also, on behalf of those, I've been interviewing some charities on my radio program. It's a huge impact to them. I know you're aware of that. I know Canada Post is aware of that. And I'll ask Mr. Hamilton as well. But on behalf of those people, is this thing going to end? Or is it going to require federal intervention?
Well, I hope it doesn't require federal intervention in the way you're speaking of it. But I think that Minister Duclos in charge of Canada Post needs to tell Canada Post that, again, that these jobs need to be meaningful, solid jobs. And that message, we heard it, but we don't think Canada Post did, because they're still talking about part-time, 8-hour-a-week jobs that we are not going to allow to come into our collective agreement.
Is that the hill to die on for you? Is it that more than wages?
It's one of them. The wages are the wages. We need to keep up with inflation, and people say 19%. Oh my, that's a big number. We had 4% when inflation went to about 11. So we're trying to catch up for the last couple of years. During the pandemic, we said we don't want to have a problem during then, and we took a 2-year extension with 2% years, and we did our part. And now they go, oh, sorry, we're broke.
Are you still? And I just have a few seconds left. In principle, against any federal intervention of any type at this point?
We're not in favor of being legislated back to work and an arbitrated collective agreement.
Okay. I'm going to leave it there, Mr. Gallant. Thank you very much for coming in. I appreciate it. Jim Gallant is a negotiator for CUPW.